so wanted to talk to you is you're also mentoring Praggnanandhaa, right? So how big was the result last week in the 8th Masters?
In the tournament itself, it was one game. It got him only 1 point. But clearly beating the world champion, and I think maybe his first brush with this kind of fame, and also just the confidence that gives you that, one day this will be very useful to him. He'll think, I've already done this once, I can do it again. And it shows a pattern recently that when he has tough tournaments, he loses games, but he doesn't lose heart. He comes back and he fights and he wins. He beats someone or the other. And this time he beat Magnus, who, by the way, had just come off 3 wins in a row. So he was he interrupted a very, very good streak. And I think that's the impact. One of the things about Pragg is I've noticed that recently he's had lots of difficulties in his chess, or at least these are becoming evident. But that's because he's competing against the best now. He played in the Tata Steel event, he played here, and he's being tested. And so I hope that right now he's growing fast and he's learning a lot. But this kind of concentrated exposure to the world's top 10 that like he's been getting now is very, very good for his chess. I'm very happy about that.
Right. If I might ask you, Anand, you talked about playing with top players now. Pragg is playing the best players in the world and he's facing difficulties. We have had so many young players who've shown so much potential over the last 15, 20 years, but somehow they have been unable to break into the top 10 or top 25. And I mean, you are the top Indian player for 35, 40 years. I could not even find out how long it is, 35 years. So the transition has been difficult for some of the younger players. Could you please talk about that? Why is it so difficult?
Yeah, no, I didn't mean difficult in that way. I meant more like this is the first time he's playing continuously against them. Before he might chance upon one of them, but now he's playing them continuously. And that because they are really trying to dissect your game, and he's facing that. So I believe that that will be very useful for him to develop. For other players, I think we have made steady progress up. But for instance, Vidit right now is in the top 25, and he's also gotten a lot of exposure. He played in some of the same events and so on. And Hari Krishna went higher. But it's true that sometimes you have to wait. I mean, they've had many promising players, but unless you get the right combination of breaks and opportunities, chances to work and so on, sometimes things have to fall in place a little bit. I hope this is kind of India's moment, that one we've been waiting for, because new generation, and there are others as well that I'm working with through WestBridge. There are many others as well, Arjun, Gukesh, both of them, by the way, just shared first place in the Indian national championship.
Yeah.
So I hope they will drive each other fiercely, because they're all under the age of 19. They're all competing very fiercely. And I think that might also have a big impact. It's very similar to what would happen in the former Soviet Union, where the juniors themselves would drive each other up. I hope this generation manages that.
Anand, let me just step in for a bit. You're also, like you said, you're mentoring so many people. You mentioned Gukesh and others. As a mentor, what do you tell these guys? Some of them are like 16, 17, because obviously there are studies happening. They have peer groups, they are friends. What do you tell them, these guys, as a mentor, like what to do, what not to do? Can you please explain that a bit?
There isn't a fixed set of things I discuss. I mean, you try to look at their experiences, and then you think of the experience closest to that you yourself had, and you share it. what you really want to discuss is what you felt like when you were going through it, how you reacted, whether you think that was the right reaction, you could have changed. But most of all, I try to be realistic. We're all human beings. We will react in most situations emotionally rather than other. And I think you just want to exchange stories, how you dealt with certain situations, how other people dealt with certain situations, what they told you afterwards. It's really the passing on of something you might call wisdom, rather than specific strategies, especially in a sport where strategies keep on evolving with new ways of thinking, new developments, and so on. But I try to share with them how I approach a problem, how I work, and then they can incorporate whatever they feel is most adequate to them. But it's really about constantly interacting with them. It's very similar to the WestBridge Chess Academy. I mean, he would meet them once in 6 months. It was a very different time. We're talking 50 years ago. But he would meet them once in 6 months or something. He would show them a couple of games. They would all get a chance to show their games. It's really this kind of collaboration.
Anand, you lived in Europe and you lived abroad also, and you lived in Europe and you were able to play in a lot of tournaments around that time, traveling from Spain across Europe. How important was that in your development, and how could that be replicated for younger players? I mean, you were very fortunate, and your father was working abroad, and then of course you made the decision to move to Spain. How important was that in your journey?
For me, it was vital because at that point, Europe was the center of world chess. Spain was almost the center of the world in a sense, at least one of the centers, one of the nodes. It made a huge difference to me to work there. I think nowadays it's less so. I mean, so much of chess has moved online, so much of stuff happens wherever you are. But still, I think you do need to travel to compete. Travel does change you. It teaches you the world is bigger than what you've experienced so far, and that kind of growth is useful. And in chess as well, meeting people from different chess cultures, different ways of doing things, and all also. But it's not as vital as it used to be. You could easily live in India and simply travel very often, like most of them do already. Or they could choose to live a part of the year abroad, or they could stay abroad. I mean, Hari Krishna, for instance, now lives in the Czech Republic, but it's no longer. I think if I was playing now, I might not do exactly the same thing like I did before. But I'm very happy that in 91, 92, I started thinking along those lines, and the time I lived in Spain made a big, big difference to my career.
Anand, interesting. You touched upon about situation in Soviet Russia in 40 years back, where juniors were like kicking up the competition and all. Do you think India has reached to that level in the sense that we have so many people coming up and getting ranking points and all?
It's very difficult to make a comparison, but in terms of numbers, yes, we have the top juniors either by results or by ranking, and then we have quite a lot against whom they are not safe. They might win, but they could easily lose as well. So they are and we have quite a talented bench of youngsters who are all fiercely competitive. I think at least on some measures we must be similar to that.
Over the last 7, 8, 9 years, India has added so many grandmasters. I think over the last 11 years, we've had nearly 50 grandmasters, which is amazing because since you became a GM in 88, about 22 GMs became GMs until 2010. So that's an amazing, you probably are an inspiration for, I think, almost all of them, especially the newer, the teenagers after 2000, 2005, 10. So do a lot of them tell you that you were the inspiration for them?
I've heard that from people. Either they may not say it directly to me, but they may say it to others. And but in many cases, it's true that I think I was the kind of role model or inspiration for the first wave of GMs, who then had a knock-on effect. So literally like a dominoes going, or a snowball maybe is a better one, snowball. And certainly, I was at the beginning of that snowball. So, but a lot of them clearly have grown up with me, being the top chess player and so on. And I guess so. I mean, I haven't kept track too much, but mostly.
So what I wanted to know was that in your interactions with them, does this awe factor come in? Are they very comfortable with you when they pose their problems to you, or are they, when they obviously when they play with you, they would try the best to beat you? But when there are interactions between you two, is there a lot of respect for you, and is there an equal exchange of ideas across generations?
Yes, very much. Yes, very much. I mean, they recognize that I've been world champion and all that, but also the Indian kids, and I'm over 50, and so there is a bit of sir and uncle. It's just built in. They can't even stop. They just say sir and man and thing all the time. So that's another thing. But yes, in the beginning, I think they were surprised to see me sitting there and analyzing with them. But they got used to it, and now we interact quite easily. When I talk to them, they talk back freely. I think they're just now used to it, and it no longer, at least the ones I work with constantly. With the others, there's always that lag. But through one circle is others. So through the WestBridge Anand Academy, I'm working through with these 7. But then I did a camp for the ASF recently. I worked with another group. I meet some people at tournaments. I get another group. So I've had a chance to interact with most of them at one point or the other. And obviously, it's two-way. I also benefit from seeing how they think, and they might have some ideas that I hadn't picked up on and things like that. Maybe there must have been awe in some of them, the first day, but they get used to it.
Yeah, and for you, is this a sort of deja vu that you're going back to your memory of your own beginnings, your own teenage years, your own developments, and you are probably in a position to help them along?
Yes, very much. I mean, you try to share with them that, once upon a time, you were also a teenager traveling around the globe. You didn't know many people, you didn't know what to do, but you experienced it, and how it turned out to be a lot of fun as well, and you made a lot of friends, and that kind of thing. You try to reassure their parents also that this will turn out okay, don't worry, and all that. Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, my problem is I sometimes hold back because it's very easy to get into the state of nostalgia, and so you kind of tone it down a little bit also.
Yeah, yeah. So over the last 1 year, I think it's been around 1 year since you started working with this group of youngsters.
Exactly, January 21, more or less. So it's more than a year.
Yeah. So how often do you meet these guys? I mean, I'm sure you're always in touch online or on the phone, but physically, how often do you get to meet the youngsters?
Okay, so physically, we were unable to meet for the first 8 months. Then I started bumping into a few of them here and there. And those who are in Chennai, some of them have come over home quite often. With the others, I bump into them sometimes at tournaments. We hang out a bit. And in fact, it was part of the plan. It was interrupted by the pandemic, but it was part of the plan that we would have get-togethers and also. I have to see now. We seem very close to that becoming safe, and so hopefully we do that soon. Have our first group get-together in WestBridge.
So what I was trying to say that I mean, there's no real challenge to your supremacy on the Indian circuit despite so many GMs coming in. So what does that suggest to you about, I mean, you are a multiple world champion. It's not easy to match your level. But what does that suggest about the quality of players and their development maybe that's happening?
We've had lots of very good players, but maybe the first generation after me was still a good 100, 120 points behind at least. But now the younger ones are, I think, inevitably will hit 2,700. I mean, I think many of the ones in my academy and even a couple of those outside, we are heading in that direction. I hope to help make it happen, because one of my aims is that India should have multiple players in the top 10, and we should be well represented there. I don't know what to say. I mean, I was also a 5-time world champion and so on. So it's maybe not the fairest comparison, when they pass, but I think it'll happen soon.
Yeah.
So I'll just do a counter question here. Once I go. So Anand, like you said, that it's going to happen. Somebody's going to break the 2,700 barrier and they overtake you or whatever. But as an athlete, as a player who has been far too dominant for the last 3.5, maybe 4 decades, from a personal front, how would you take it? Because as a sports reporters, we know players to be very for having tunnel vision about their own superiority, and they just want to dominate for as long as they could. How would you take it personally?
It's tough. There's a day it happens, and that's always a bit of a shock. I think you can easily, I've experienced it before, not with an Indian, but let's say the day I lost my title, the day somebody overtook me in rating, the day somebody did this, somebody did that. So it's not like I've not experienced it before. You'll find new ways in which the world passes you by. But look, after the last couple of years have been confusing. I mean, essentially since the pandemic happened, I have also played much less. And that's also left me slightly bemused as to where I am in the chess world, because I've had to take very long break. I've had breaks before, but not 6 months, 8 months, right? And I will play some tournaments later this year. I'm trying to get ready for that. But there have been a lot of new experiences in that sense as well, because I've never been inactive for this long. And if I had not played last October, I would not have played a rating game for much too long. So I'm myself in a bit of a in-between situation. But I'm also at the stage where I can see that it's nice to assume new roles. I've been doing a lot of coaching, a lot of mentoring, taken on lots of other assignments, things like that in these last 2 years. And part of it, commentating, things like that. Part of it is, you live and learn, you try new things. And it's at this stage, it felt appropriate. I'll cope. I don't know.
Yeah. Anand, you talked about, in your book, you write about that you became probably more fired up after 95, your first World Championship match. And is there a problem with some of the youngsters that they get a little complacent after achieving the GM rank? There has been some comment about this.
No, that's true. Well, I mean, it's not necessarily complacency and so on, but life takes many people in different directions. Some feel other tugs. other things tugging at them. Some have difficult circumstances. You need some luck as well. I mean, I often tell people, yes, I was very talented, I was very good, but I had lots and lots of breaks. My parents were very supportive. So in the 1970s, that was not an automatic thing. Your parents supporting you completely when you're going to take on sports as a career. Then I was a very talented junior, but many talented juniors don't win the World Junior. I won the World Junior. I became a grandmaster. Those opened doors for me. I then got invited to all sorts of tournaments. So I got my chances and I took them. But sometimes you need things to work for you. I had many life-changing friends that I made, especially in Europe, who would help me a lot over the next few years as I ascended to the top. I married. My wife was very supportive. Practically, big, the career with the two of us traveling and playing. So lots of things happened, and for many people, they might have had to take up a job much earlier than they needed to, or had other obligations. They tried their best. And some of them may not have pursued it all the way, but they may have taken a realistic decision or what felt for them realistic. But what is true is that the earlier generation of grandmasters, they seeded the current generation. Many of them started academies, many of them became coaches. And so many of that generation worked with either today's players or today's players' coaches. So already they've had enough time for two generations of those. And it's part of the way the Soviet system developed as well. So a natural way for it to develop.
Yeah. Since you became the world champion and multiple world champions, maybe the younger players do have this ambition also, and also they are open to the possibility that an Indian can become a world champion. Before you, that was unthought of. Even becoming grandmaster, that was an unthought of in Indian chess circles.
Yes, I think the baseline has shifted. They will always kind of be compared to my. My results will be a kind of base when people will say no. But many of them, I'm glad, are starting out at a very high stage. And so really, I think Pragg, Nihal, Gukesh, Arjun, these guys are capable of becoming 2,700 players, which means they will play top tournaments. They'll be in that elite group. And each of them will find at some point that they'll run into some achievement of mine. At least people will ask, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? In the same way that I once faced the question, when are we going to have a grandmaster? They'll inevitably face it. And hopefully it stirs them on, that's all. But we are still a few steps away from that, and we'll go step by step, but I'm confident that they'll get that.
Right. And for somebody like Arjun, sponsorship is still a problem, despite, he's had a breakthrough last few months. He's surged up the ranking and some fantastic performances. Sponsorship is still a major issue for even the most promising youngsters in chess. And that's...
Yes, it is changing. It is changing slowly, and everyone needs some sponsorship and help. And I hope we get something soon. But sometimes people need a headline result, and Pragg's result will, I think, bring him some sponsorship. The next stage is someone else. But first of all, the Indian sports scene is changing. Second, the Indian chess scene is changing. There is a lot of lucrative opportunities besides sponsorship. Lots of lucrative opportunities, engaging with your friends through online mediums, social media, all these kinds of things. Hopefully, they'll have the financial means to pursue this career, which all of them want very badly. But I think they are very attractive, and one day they will deliver, and India does reward these things these days. So I hope that it will come together.
Right. Another point I wanted to make was about the need to balance your physical fitness and also your emotional calmness. I mean, that can only come to with experience, especially for a youngster. What are you doing at the academy to mentor the kids on these two aspects, to be physically fit as well, to be emotionally very calm?
Well, one of the first things we did, I think it was March of the 21 last year, March 21, obviously not March 22 yet, but March 21. And I gave them the talk on fitness. I laid out my own experience, how once upon a time when I was not fit, it cost me some crucial matches and it hurt, and how important this is. And I told them, you won't need it now. At 16, you don't need to be fit. You'll get away with it. But when you're 21, suddenly you'll wish you had started a few years earlier and get that across. And we arranged a very famous physio in Chennai, and called Kannan, Dr. Kannan, to give them a couple of tips to start. And then in WestBridge, we bought them all watches so that they could keep track of their fitness. And many of them would upload their photos to me. I mean, send me stuff that they, their workouts and things like that. I keep nudging them along. I will nudge them along even more when we meet physically. The other thing is, I'll tell you a funny story. In Kolkata last year, I knew that Gukesh and Raunak and Nihal as well were feeling quite bad because they had a difficult first day in the Blitz. So I visited each one of them, and I kind of told them some stories of the situation I had faced and some of my experiences, how my opponents react, how lousy I feel at the end of a bad day, but a good day the next day changes everything and so on. And I told some of them stories of their opponents, because they'd also been my opponents in the past. And the next day they came and laughed and said, he did exactly what you said he would do. So, I was making fun of them. I said, he used to laugh like that and he would distract me and this and that. And then next day it's exactly as you. So again, it's the stories, it's the wisdom that I really want to pass on, because the chess moves, even I have to look at all my old chess moves and evaluate them again and again. Knowledge changes, but experience and how to cope. And I also tell them, very important to get a good night's sleep. Very important to actually sleep, not spend the restless night tossing and turning, thinking what happened, but to be able to sleep. And that is an ability to put the past behind you. It is not an ability just to sleep. It is an ability to put the past behind you. You played some games, but whatever emotional effect it had on you, to put it to one side and focus on tomorrow. That, what I try to emphasize to them. And I told them how fitness helps for that as well. So these things are all interconnected, but we will continue to work on it. And I hope when we have our physical meetings, that's when I hope this will become clearer.
Yeah. One last question for me. I think it's very important to have a rounded personality in every sphere of life, and chess players could tend to become a little too intense about because it's played in the mind. So maybe they tend to become a little too intense, and that I've been reading about chess players, our own Indian chess players, and they need to widen their range of interests outside the game as well.
You're absolutely right. I believe that they need to grow, but that's part of it. I mean, they're teenagers, so they need to have more experiences and to grow. But I would also say that you have to be realistic. For everything about me, when I have a bad day, I'm still impossible to be with for others for a day at least. And I can hold my breath and I can get through a conversation, but I don't think I come close to be able to pretend that I'm okay. It's very hard. What I've learned is the discipline of really hating yourself and still maintaining a polite conversation. I think that the other person is from a world or a profession which doesn't have the need to understand. So if the other person is a tournament sponsor and I'm stuck, that I've had a bad day, but I've had to go and for a sponsor's dinner, I'll do my polite stuff and I'll get through it. But inside, I'm dying to get out and get back to my home. So I think the only thing you can say is, yes, you need to be rounded. Yes, you need to have a perspective. And believe me, there'll be days when it's impossible, but you'll get better at it. But that's simply the cruelty of chess, or maybe the cruelty of sport. Because if we didn't want the sport or the result badly enough, we wouldn't be in this thing in the first place.
Yeah.
And
True.
then the disappointment is something you just have to exist with.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, when I have any book for
Yeah, I have a question, Anand. Obviously, Indian media and the Indian public and the chess community are building all our young stars up to the next level, right? And obviously, it's backed by the results that they are showing. But like some of them, like Pragg is only 16. We also need to find a fine line for him to survive as a teenager. How important it is for somebody like you to tell him, okay, boss, losses are okay, but life moves on. Because for 16-year-old, it could be very harsh world as in professional sport. How do you deal with that?
Yes, one thing I would say is that how teenagers grow and experience. I know a couple of teenagers at least who did not have a chance to finish school, and I did. I mean, I went through school and college and did my BCom and all, and I felt when I grew up, I felt it was important I did that to have relationships outside the game, to have some perspective away from your game also. You should be able to transport yourself once in a while outside and see how you look from there. But having said that, I know people who didn't do their school or they did private schooling and who turned out okay. They were not able to continue their school all the way because the nature of your commitment to chess also changes. Nowadays, you're forced to make that earlier even. But the important thing is that chess itself then gives you the opportunity to meet interesting people, travel, and so on, and that compensates a bit, and that opens you up a bit. It didn't happen exactly the way school would have done, but it compensated a bit, and they turned out okay. The important thing is though to have these other interests, to make friends, to be able to this ability to put chess aside for a few hours a day, to switch it off. That is very important. And the media cycle has changed. It's not what it used to be 40 years back. So I have to adapt for that as well, because nowadays the hype comes bigger and faster. It's amplified a lot by social media, and then it disappears faster. And so they have more intense swings. But so in fact, I tell them, when you're lucky enough to be in the news, just enjoy it. Don't think it's overwhelming, because one day it'll dry up totally, and then you'll have 2 months where it's going to be feast and famine always. Enjoy it while it happens, because not only is chess, but there's badminton, there's tennis, there's a lot of other sports vying for attention in India now. A lot of Olympic sports. So enjoy it, but don't get too caught up in it, and remember, in the end, not to forget what brought you here, which is chess. Hopefully, it's not something you convey in 5 words. You will convey constantly by meetings and but that's what we'll all have to strive to do.
Thank you so much, Anand. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and best wishes for your endeavors with your own career and with your proteges as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.